Okay, well, good evening. My name is Lisa Strahs-Lorenc. Most of you know me. We have a few people who are guests, and I appreciate you being here tonight. First of all, this means the world to me. I have family here, I have friends here, and I have my book contributors here, which is the most important thing because this book wouldn't be possible without them, and you'll be meeting them later. So this book is a second book. The first support book was launched exactly 10 years ago today, and it was called, and I will show it to you, it was called Pancreatic Cancer, It's a Family Affair. It had 20 contributors, and at the time it had 4 survivors. This book that we're launching today is a follow-up for all of us, 10 years later, and where we were and where we are now. It's pretty amazing what has happened. I want to tell you why September 3rd means so much to me. On September 3rd, 1975, I met my husband-to-be at Syracuse University. On September 3rd, 1977, we got engaged. On September 3rd, 2010, I wrote the first support book, only a year after he had died of pancreatic cancer. And we launched today's second book. So September 3rd is a very important date for me. And again, thank you so much for being part of this important day. I'd like to start with a quick poll. I want to see a little bit about who you are and what kinds of experiences you've had. So I'm going to launch one of the polls, and let's see how we do. The first poll is coming up. Has anyone close to you died of pancreatic cancer? Could you please put yes or no? And I'm going to launch the poll now. Okay, I think most of you had answered. So we have 65% say yes and 35% have said no. I'll share the results. There they are. Okay, we're going to go to the next poll, which is, one second, see if I can go to the next question. There's a second question here somewhere. Let's see if I can get to the second question. Question number 2. Okay. There we go. Okay, polling number 2. Here it is. Has anyone close to you died of any type of cancer? Yes or no?
I'm going to expect we have 100% here on
That's
this
right.
one.
That's right. Yep, we do. Okay. And then that's your results. Okay. And we will go to the last poll, which gives us a sense of how long it's been for all of us. If I can get to the last poll, let's see if I can get to the number here. Number 3, where are we? Number 3, relaunch polling. Where is number 3? Okay. Well, here we go. Okay, polling number 3. We're going to launch. How long ago did they pass away? Gives us a sense because we're dealing right now with our book contributors who it's been about 10 or 11 years for us. Okay, and I'll share those results. So most of us are out more than 10 years, and so this book is pretty relevant through the grieving process and through all of our ups and downs of moving on with our lives, which is really the point of the book. So I did that poll so that we'd learn a little bit more about what our experience have been and what we share together. And that's why I invited Dr. Andrew Rakeman. So the proceeds of this book go to the Lustgarten Foundation. Our contributors, of course, you know, our loved ones died of that disease, which, by the way, we do have one survivor right now. I'm not sure how she's doing because I haven't heard from her in a while, but she is a survivor. The first book had 4, as I mentioned before. So, you know, we're very dedicated to the work of the Lustgarten Foundation. It is the largest private funder of pancreatic cancer research. It's right here on Long Island. And so I'm really proud that the book proceeds will go to that that cause. So Dr. Reichman is VP of Research, and he's going to update us as to what's going on within the Lustgarten community. So Dr. Reichman, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you for the introduction and the invitation to be here, and for all the support that you've had for the foundation through the book and over the years. It's especially honored to be here, part of this group where you're bringing together this wonderful team of contributors who have done so much for the whole community of people impacted by pancreatic cancer. And I think hopefully most people here are familiar with the Lustgarten Foundation. And as Lisa mentioned, we're the largest private funder of pancreatic cancer research, and really a foundation that's dedicated to driving towards cures for pancreatic cancer. And that's our mission. I'm very focused on that mission, and very focused in the method we're going to use to get there. And that's through the support of research to help us drive better therapies, understand the disease better, and move forward. And I think that the part that maybe we don't often talk about as much, but I think is really most important to mention, is what's the fuel that drives us? Why do we move forward? And it really is all the folks on this meeting here today, and the folks all around the country and all around the world who are impacted by pancreatic cancer, whether they're patients themselves, survivors, family members, caregivers. And it's really those stories, that one of those stories in particular that led to the founding of the Lustgarten Foundation. It's the story of Mark Lustgarten, but really then all of the other stories that have come to mind since then. So for me personally, this is a very motivating and empowering, and I know I'm going to show back up at work tomorrow very energized to keep things moving, getting to interact with a group like this. But also want to use that as a way to share that all the advances that I'm going to talk about, I hope everyone comes away with that with a sense of hope, a sense of promise, a sense of progress, but also a sense of pride that you're part of what's helping to drive this whole machine forward. So I'm going to give a pretty quick update. If you gave me an hour, I'd probably talk for an hour and a half. Lisa made me swear to 10 minutes, so I'm really aiming for 8, so I can try to hit the 10. But just kind of hit on some of the highlights, and hopefully you all will leave with the same sense that I do, that right now is a really exciting time for biomedical research in general, for cancer research specifically, but even more specifically for pancreatic cancer research, and getting us closer and closer to that ultimate goal of cures for pancreatic cancer. And I'll kind of give you the punchline of why I think right now is so exciting. And it's because if we look across all the priorities that Lustgarten is driving towards and all the different areas that we're trying to fund, right now in each of those areas, we're in testing new approaches, new therapies, new ways to go about identifying and treating pancreatic cancer in people impacted by the disease. There's still a lot of great work happening in mice. There's still a lot of great work happening in the lab that's informing all this, but the rubber's really hitting the road and helping us to learn about, are these seminal discoveries that are happening about the biology really going to turn into better outcomes that are so desperately needed for people impacted by pancreatic cancer. So if you think about, why is pancreatic cancer so terrible, and why isn't it having the same kind of renaissance that other cancers are having, there's really 3 big issues that bubble up. Is one, as many, I'm sure all the stories on here are going to follow, have this to some extent, it's diagnosed too late. We can't identify pancreatic cancer early enough to be able to intervene with things like surgery that we know can be effective. It's often caught after it's metastasized and it's spread throughout the body. And the tools that we have just can't keep up when it's that far along. And that gets to the second thing. We don't have the kind of specific and great drugs and tools that we do need to have to be able to treat pancreatic cancer more effectively. The biology of pancreatic cancer is a little bit different, has some strange characteristics about it that make us think that we're going to need different types of drugs than we need for some other types of cancer. So we need better drugs. And we also need to know how to use them in the right patient at the right time. We need to be able to be personalized in our approach. I mean, you hear statistics like 20 to 25%, only 20 to 25% of patients treated with traditional chemotherapies with pancreatic cancer respond. We're clearly not targeting the right drugs in the right patients. So those really are the 3 key areas that we're driving towards in the Lustgarten Foundation: earlier detection, development of new drugs and new therapies, and driving towards personalized medicine, making better decisions about which drugs go into which people. And like I said, really across those three areas that we're seeing incredible progress of testing out these approaches now in patients and really trying to see, do we have the tools that we need to start making a difference in people's lives? And just a few highlights across those. First of all, in earlier detection. So when we think about detecting things earlier, we can think about either targeting people who we know are at high risk and screening them more aggressively, or we can think about going out into a broad population and screening the whole population for early signs of disease or early risk, much like we do now in colon cancer and in breast cancer and in prostate cancer. And towards that end, we've had some real exciting success lately with work that started out at Johns Hopkins University of trying to create a real simple blood test, so something you could go to your regular doctor, get a blood draw, and get a test that would tell you, do you have some signs of early cancer formation? And they started it with a real lean towards doing this specifically for pancreatic cancer, but also realized it wouldn't be hard to build into this test screens for lots of different kinds of cancers as well. And since you could do it so simply, it could be rolled out. That technology called CancerSeek was picked up by a company or spun out into a company called Thrive Early Detection, who just early this summer published an exciting paper in their first big clinical study in 10,000 women showing that this test does work. They can detect cancers that weren't detected by other means, and they could get these folks into treatment earlier and get them better outcomes down the line. Now, 10,000 sounds like a lot of people. 10,000 isn't that many when you're looking at a rare disease like pancreatic. So within that group, they didn't happen to find any pancreatic cancer patients, but they wouldn't have expected to because of the relatively small sample size. So now they're taking that forward into a larger study that they would be able to go to the regulatory agencies with to get that approved eventually and roll that out. We're also looking at, can you use that type of a study in a more targeted group, people who we know are at high risk because of family history or smoking or diabetes or pancreatic cysts, and see if it could be effective there too. One of the other ways you could look about detecting earlier are there tests that people are getting for other reasons that may give you a diagnosis of pancreatic cancer sort of as a aside to that test. And I think, so my mother was diagnosed with lung cancer. Now it's about 6 years ago, and she this summer passed 5 years cancer-free after having surgery, because she was caught very early because she went to get a chest x-ray for a broken rib and they happened to find a spot. So could we do something like that with pancreatic cancer? And again, the group at Hopkins is developing computational tools, sort of machine learning, artificial intelligence tools that could look at images, the CT images or CAT scan images that are taken for any reason of the abdomen and detect automatically if there's some abnormality in the pancreas. And that would be something you wouldn't have to have the doctor specifically looking for it. It wouldn't have to be indicated because of symptoms, but the computer would be able to find on its own. So they've had a lot of success there in building out those algorithms and are now looking at what's it going to take to go out and kind of test that in a broader population. They're testing that on known images already now. So on earlier detection, we're really looking at a variety of approaches, sort of novel, simple blood tests, things that we can target into high risk, and things that we could figure out from existing medical information and medical records. But then that gets to, well, how can we, when we get to the point where we detect this earlier and earlier, are we going to have the right drugs to be able to treat pancreatic cancer effectively and safely and without causing a lot of unnecessary harm to the patient? So there's a large push now in what we call drug development, really finding newer drugs, different drugs, more targeted drugs that are going to help us do better in terms of treating pancreatic cancer. And this is where the 2+ decades of basic research that the Lustgarten Foundation has supported is really paying off. And all those pieces of biology that we've been figuring out in the lab are now showing us pathways that we can use drugs to target for. And so there's one example is work coming out of Cold Spring Harbor here on Long Island that identified some very particular pathways that control the immune system that there happen to be drugs against, that now we're getting ready to start a clinical trial with a drug called plerixafor combined with some of these new immune checkpoint inhibitors to see if you remove the brakes that the tumor puts out that keep the immune system out, will that allow these immune checkpoint inhibitors that are so transformative in lung cancer and melanoma to have more success in pancreatic cancer. So again, this basic discovery that's now moving into clinical trials. Also, we have a big partnership with Stand Up to Cancer, who's funds across many cancer types. About a year and a half ago, we had a competition called the New Therapies Challenge, where a bunch of groups came in with ideas that they tried to validate in animal models, and now 4 of those projects are moving forward into the second round, where they're going to be running clinical trials based on those basic discoveries about how to target DNA damage repair mechanisms, or KRAS mutations, or specific other immune activation pathways, are all moving forward now into clinical trials. And one of the things as a foundation we realized is there are more of these opportunities out there. We want to have a more efficient way to be driving these forward into the clinic and test them in people as fast as possible, right? We'd rather be able to get into people and learn that it doesn't work quickly, but spend lots of years seeing how well we can cure pancreatic cancer in mice, right? So we can move on to the next thing. So through a group that our chief medical advisor, Liz Jaffe, put together called the Translational Advisory Group, we've really been combing all of the top institutions and finding these other projects that are ready to move forward into the clinic and putting together a new program to move those forward as fast as possible. So I would say, look forward over the coming months and years to see more and more of these new trials moving forward of how to better manipulate the immune system, how to better deliver drugs specifically to the pancreas. And at the same time, we realize that this success is based on that investment in basic research, and we want to keep that pipeline moving. So also right now, we're reviewing a number of grants, looking at some of those key areas of biology that are different about pancreatic cancer, about the metabolic effects of pancreatic cancer, about the different in the inflammatory and the immune environment that happens in the pancreas. This stroma, this protective tissue that forms around the tumor that really keeps a lot of drugs out, how can we target that mechanism? And why is it that pancreatic cancer so easily metastasizes and spreads? So we're also now reviewing a number of grants looking at specific targets in those 4 key areas to try to keep that pipeline moving forward, from basic research moving as quickly as possible into clinical trials. And then the last bit that I'll touch on, which I think is a really exciting story, and it's really born from Strahs-Lorenc Foundation research, is around personalized medicine. And all this gets to, so now if looking to the future, if we're diagnosing people early and the oncologists have a whole armament of drugs that they can use, how are we going to know the right drugs to pick and to treat people with? And this is particularly acute in something like pancreatic cancer that moves so fast, where we don't have time to try out a treatment, see if it works. If it doesn't, move on to the next one. In a patient, we really want to be able to start out with the right drug as the first drug. Again, out of Cold Spring Harbor, led by Dave Tuvison, has been a strong effort to say, can we make a model, not just of pancreatic cancer in general, but of a patient's specific tumor that we can grow in the lab and test a whole bunch of different drugs on? And they call these organoids. So they'll take a biopsy of the tumor, same like they would take a biopsy for diagnosis of the tumor. But send those cells to the lab and keep them growing and grow little, in a dish, little tumor organoids, they call them. So like little organs, little tumoroids, that then they can do all kinds of experiments on. And they've been able to show that they can create these, they have the same kind of biology of tumors in the body, they can put them into animals and treat them in animals. And importantly, they can put them on a dish that has a whole lot of little wells, put a different drug in each well, and see which drug the tumors respond best to. And they've been able to show this on old samples, but now we're really getting ready to move forward into a clinical trial where they're going to create the organoids from the patient at the time of diagnosis and run these tests and then see how was the patient treated and did that reflect what they saw in the test, so that eventually we'll get to the point where they're picking out the right drug before the first treatment is given. So that's a clinical study, again, that we're funding in collaboration with Stand Up to Cancer, as well as a Canadian a pancreatic cancer foundation that's getting ready to launch pretty soon. that I think will give us, a real hint of, are these organoids really going to help clinicians make decisions, not just scientists to learn things, but for clinicians to make decisions about how to move things forward. I'll kind of wrap it up there. There's lots more details to talk about. There's lots of exciting things going on. But I think at a high level, again, if we back up and we say, why is pancreatic cancer so tough? We get it too late. We don't have the tools. We don't know how to use them. And hopefully those stories convince you a little bit. We are making progress on finding it earlier. There's lots of new drugs out there that we can try, things that are used in other diseases, and we're going to test them as fast as possible so that toolbox gets bigger and bigger. It was Apex Technical School. We learn how to use the tool goes in the box goes home with you. That's what we want oncologists to have. And then we want to give them also the tools to be smart as they can about how to use those drugs in people. And for me, what's so exciting is those aren't just lofty ideas right now. They're things that are being put into practice, tested in the clinic. And, and hopefully it's always hard to say when, but hopefully someday soon is going to change somebody's outcome who's diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. So it just, again, to close out, thank you so much again, Lisa, for inviting me here. And thank you to everyone on the call for support of Lisa, support of pancreatic cancer, and, hopefully taking away some pride that whether you've, raised money, raised your voice, educated a neighbor, you've been part of all of this machine that's driving this forward and bringing more attention and helping us to do better.
Dr. Reagan, we can't thank you enough for the great work that you do. Lustgarten is a wonderful organization. I'm really proud that it's here on Long Island and that we're doing whatever we can do to fund it. And thank you for bringing us up to date, because it always was a mystery to me how, I would meet some of the scientists in the walks and trying to figure out sort of what they're working on and what they're doing. And I'm glad to hear about the Stand Up to Cancer too, because I know that at one point there was $18 million or something going to these dream teams, and they were researching pancreatic cancer. And I remember reading about that. So, great work.
Yeah, Stand Up has been a wonderful partner.
Yeah. Thank you so much. We have follow-up materials that are going to be handed out, going to be actually emailed out to everyone, courtesy of the Lustgarten Foundation. They've also put our book, they're putting our book on their site. They put the event also on the site. So we appreciate your support, and we're going to do everything we can to try and eradicate this disease in our lifetime. How's that? In our lifetime.
That's a good time.
Yeah, it is. It is. So thank you again. Appreciate it. Sarah, do you have the unmute button here? Because I've got mute all. You want to unmute everyone?
Sure.
Yeah, let's unmute all. Okay. All right. Some people might decide that they would like to stay muted, but I'd like to talk about the book now. Obviously, we wrote the book for two reasons. One was, of course, to support pancreatic cancer research in the Lustgarten Foundation. But the other was a very important reason. We really want to share our stories, and we really want to share what happened to us in the years that have gone by without our loved ones. We believe that the support is what people need to get through, and that they need to see that life, there is another life on the other side, we'll call it that way. And it is not that we have forgotten our loved ones, not at all, but we have learned to move on with our lives. So I want to share a few things about the book. And obviously the book sales, the proceeds are going to the Lustgarten Foundation. But in addition, we want this book out to many different organizations, locations. We'll brainstorm a lot of different ways that we can get this book out. So I want to start with the dedication of the book. I'll see if I can share my screen and find this thing. It was there, and there it is. Okay, so let me just do a share. And I know that you can all read it, but I just want to tell you that for me, obviously this was a very personal project, and it is, of course, to my husband, who I was married to with 33.5 years. We were together, and of course my two kids, Sari, who contributed to the second book, Ryan, who contributed to the first book. And as I believe, and all of us share, hopefully, memories never die, and he will live in my heart forever. I also dedicate to Stu, who I met 9 years ago, and we have a wonderful relationship. He was also a widow. And so I'm very grateful to have a second love and a second life. In addition, he brought some family with him, and he's got a sister and brother-in-law that it's wonderful to share times together, nephew, niece-in-law, another aunt, cousins, so a whole new family. Wonderful. And you can read the other things that I wrote, you know, what I wish for my kids and of course my grandkids. But the end one, and I want this for all my contributors, is that I am so grateful for their willingness to share their stories and to support others. They opened up their lives, their hearts, their experiences, and every month they would contribute to another chapter without anybody knowing what the others have written. And of course, I put everything together. So I appreciate their time and their dedication, because without them, this book would not be possible. And as I mentioned previously, we all have not met together, and it is my dream for someday we will all meet. I've met a few, but not everybody. And I've seen a few now in person on Zooms. So it's awfully special to be able to have this. So thank you. I want to go through how we decided to go with this book. I want to show the table of contents so that you see what it looks like. So the table of contents shows, let me just make it so that you can sort of see the whole thing. So we broke it up into years. I wanted to show first sort of our stories. So we look back first at our memories and what happened to our loved ones. And again, our survivor spoke about her own struggles with, you know, her health and pancreatic cancer. She's out, by the way, 12 years, Dr. Rakeman. And she's fighting hard to be well and to stay healthy. So we go to the first year, which for many of us sort of was dull in our lives, trying to figure out how to go on with our lives. The second year, people started talking about the changes that they had in their lives. They felt changes. Then we went right to 5 years and more changes in our lives. 10 years and where we are now, many of us are at least 10 years. I'm 11 years since my husband died. The last chapters, we talked about the significant changes in our lives and what we're surprised about. We learned a lot through this process. And it's a journey, by the way, that each of us went through differently. So there's no right or wrong of any of this. So we talked about that. And then we also talked about looking ahead, but never forgetting the past. So there are ways that each of us honor our loved ones. If we have time, I'm going to share a memorial site that I made for my husband. It's just a nice way of feeling like he's there with me, and I contribute to it periodically. And then at the end, advice from the trenches. We look back and talk in terms of what we've learned from the experience, and how we sort of, you know, came to be where we are now. So it's a beautiful way of showing the whole process of our lives. I'm really proud of what we did. And as our contributors saw the book, they didn't realize sort of what each of them were writing. So it's nice to see it all together as they got the book. I'm going to talk about the contributors now. So who are they? So these are all the contributors, the relationships that they had. You can see that some sons, daughters, spouses, a sibling, and then of course Jennifer herself, and then the patients' names. So, and the first book had 20 of them, and as I said, at the time, 4 survivors. But that was 10 years ago, a long time ago. So, and they come from all over. And so I want to stop sharing because this is the time where I want to introduce the people who are on the line now, and see if anybody else joined us. There were supposed to be others, but unfortunately, technology, I'm sure, has not done well with people, and we don't have everybody. But I'd like them to introduce themselves, and I also want them to talk about where they live, who they lost, who they live with now, and just update us as to their lives now. Okay, Sari, I'm going to have you go first since you're my daughter.
I think everybody knows me by now. I'm Lisa's daughter, Sari. I live in Los Angeles, California. I lost my dad 11 years ago. And I have 3 children and I'm married now. Yeah.
Lots of changes.
Lots.
Lots of changes, Sari.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Aaron. Okay, do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Aaron Galvin, and I currently live full-time in a home in Boynton Beach, Florida. Um, Hot as heck here, but occasionally we go outside and then rush back into the house. Um, my wife, I've known her for a long time. I met her when she was 15 years old, and we got married when she was 18, and she died when she was 71. So we were married 51 years, plus we had a few years before that. She had a very good friend who developed pancreatic cancer just about the same time that she did. In fact, the very same week, a friend came out with the same diagnosis. And it was in the tail of the pancreas, and it also already had metastasized. So a friend decided, what the heck, it doesn't pay to fight it. I'll just wait it out. Believe it or not, she died in 3 weeks after her diagnosis. My wife and I decided that we would try to fight it, and we investigated a number of things. One of them was monoclonal antibodies, and it was a double-blind test, a double-blind study, and we knew immediately that she got on the positive side. She didn't get a placebo, and she wound up feeling a lot better. She had to go on chemo, of course, and chemo was 2 weeks out of 3, 2 weeks of having chemo twice, 2 or 3 times a week, and then a week off. And it turned out during the week off, she felt reasonably okay. So we used that time to go to places around the world that we thought we wanted to go to, but hadn't yet. So we did that, and we had, believe it or not, a lot of quality time. Sometimes she had to go in a wheelchair. We went on a couple of cruises with her in a wheelchair, but still, we enjoyed it. We enjoyed the shows and the food, and managed to get almost a year and a half, a little less than a year and a half of additional time. And
I don't want to interrupt you. I don't want to spoil the story for them as well. Fast forward just to who you live with now and where you are now, okay?
Okay.
Because it's in the book.
Yeah. Well, about the same time that my wife died, a woman, Marcia Vento, her husband died, not of pancreatic cancer, but of cancer. And we met each other very briefly, but then I went away for my 6 months away from Florida to Martha's Vineyard off of Cape Cod. And during the time I was there, we emailed each other. And in that 6 months, we got to know each other pretty well just through emails. So when I returned to Florida, we dated the first week I got back and found that we were very compatible. And that was a big help to my surviving, losing my dear wife. So not too long after that, we decided to sell her house, and she moved in with me, and she's been living with me for the last 10 years. So I survived and I created a new life. I haven't forgotten my wife. I have a different kind of love for Marcia Vento, but nevertheless, it's as good.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the story.
Thanks, Aaron. I don't mean to cut you off. We could all go, you know how much we have to say. We want everybody to read the book too. So Betty, you want to share a little bit about, we need to unmute you. Let's unmute you. Okay, Betty, just press unmute. The button. Betty, you have to unmute. Just press.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay, Betty, go ahead.
I live in Minnesota and I lost my husband in 2007. I had been married for 47 years. He was my high school sweetheart, the only person I had ever dated. I was married when I was 18. I am now remarried since 2011 to Victor, and we're living happily ever after, never to forget my first husband.
Yeah. And her daughter also contributed to the book, Kari, who I thought
Yeah.
might be on the line. So
Ah,
yeah. Thank you, Betty. Pat.
Hi, I met my husband Charles when I was 21. We knew each other for about 2.5 months before we decided to get married. So we didn't want to take a long time to think about it, I guess. We were married for 44 years. He was diagnosed and they diagnosed him at about a stage 2.5, as the surgeon put it. Thought he would be eligible for a Whipple with some reasonable chance of long-term survival. But when the surgeon got in, he found that he was an inoperable advanced stage 4. And so he decided to have chemo for palliative treatment. And he was one of the 20% that it was very effective. And I don't think at that time anybody had any idea who would be receptive to it and who wouldn't, but he did extremely well. He reached the stage of having no evidence of disease. And while he was still having chemo, he had radiation to see if they could get anything that might be lurking about. And the radiologist said that he had about a 15% chance of an actual long-term survival. And that was not to be, as it turned out. So he had 17 months of gemcitabine, and then it stopped being effective and his markers started to go back up. They were down to a normal range. And they tried a couple of other chemos, neither of which was effective. So when the final stages came, they were kind of a surprise. I mean, we knew that was going to happen. Nobody really told us how to expect it to happen, and we didn't expect it to happen quite as fast as it did. Nonetheless, he survived 2 years from the initial diagnosis, which was at that time extremely unusual. I believe there's more patients who are getting that kind of result now than there were nearly 10 years ago. It's 9.5 years ago now. So at any rate, we lived in a very small town, 1,100 people on the northern coast of California. It was not a place for me to stay by myself, so I moved back to the East Coast. So when I moved on, as I told Lisa, I moved on 3,500 miles, and my daughter and her family lived here not far from where I live. My granddaughter's on the call, and she's hidden herself because she's probably going to cry from time to time because that's what she does. She's an adult now too. She's in her last year of college. And so we spent a lot of time together while she's been growing up. We went to Italy and we went to a bunch of national parks and various places around and about. And now she's busy being a student and working and doing all the things that young ladies do. And so we're not able to do that anymore. But she's going to read the book and cry a lot.
And she's going to see all the wonderful stories and the pictures that you did as well. Thanks, Pat.
Yes.
Appreciate it. Sherry, go ahead.
Hello.
Hey, Sherry.
Hi, Sherry.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. My name is Sherry. I live in North Carolina. I was caretaker for my mother. My parents were divorced. My dad had been sick for a couple years. I was his caretaker. 2 months after he died in 2006, Mom was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer stage 4, inoperable. and they said she was not a surgical candidate at all. So, like, kind of like Pat was just saying, any lengthy survivorship, it was rare at the time. My mom survived 2 years and 4 months after diagnosis. She had gotten to the point where at one point they called it temporary remission, or I can't remember the wording, but we knew that that was just a brief moment. And sure enough, her markers went back up until they got to the point where there's nothing else they could do. So they called in hospice. It was just me and her living here. She lived with me. This is Mom.
Pictures are in the book, folks. Pictures are in the book.
She
pictures.
lived with me with my dog. Mom died on Friday the 13th, which is bad for me now. And it was February 13th, so it was like 5 minutes before Valentine's Day. So it was real hard with all that. I currently, my dog that I lived with died 11 days after my mom did. So the house got really empty and really quiet. But this is who I live with now, and I don't think his picture's in the book.
No, you should put his picture in the book.
Oh no, this is my little bear.
Very
His
cute.
little bear.
Very cute.
He's been running around the scene, so I thought you might see him. But anyway, I guess that's my story. She died in 2009, and I've just been trying to get through it since.
Yeah. So as you can see, and thank you all for sharing your very personal stories and everything that we went through. We went through 15 months, you know, of running around, going to every place we could, researching everything, becoming experts in the field. And by the way, Dr. Rakeman, my husband's CA-19-9 was 0 the entire time of this disease, 0. And people would say 0, like what, you know, CA, by the way, that's a marker, everybody, it's a tumor marker. And it's usually in the thousands when people are sick. His was 0. So I think it's really interesting. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. His tumor obviously didn't have the protein in it to mark. So very interesting stuff. We all became experts, I guess, in this field. I want to talk about the marketing of the book. And I want to talk about how much has been done. When I decided to do this, I went full in and I purchased marketing and social media and everything. Today alone, something like 1 million impressions went out for just a small little ribbon thing that went out about the book. And then their press release went out. And then I want to show you the website that we developed. Pretty cool. And it's a place to buy the book as well. So this is what we created. It's a pretty website. It's got a few areas to look in. In the home area, it talks about the book itself. And then, of course, you can find information about me. And I don't know, it's supposed to click. There it goes. Okay. And the pictures. By the way, just personal. My husband and I had a favorite place, Chittenango Falls in Syracuse. That was 1975. Stu and I went to Chittenango Falls in 2019. So I thought that's just perfect. Looking back and looking ahead. So it's on the back of the book, by the way. So there's our story. There are links to Lustgarten and the online memorial website that I made, the Facebook page, and me, contact email. They also added something nice. We put together a blog, and the blog's purpose is to be able to share, for me, to be able to share things that are going on, but for other people who may have questions, who may have things that they want to discuss, maybe, you know, like we all met through a listserv, by the way. And so this might be an area where we can put in things that are happening. Dr. Rakeman, maybe you could, you know, share with us things that can, you know, that I can share as well. So it'll be a dynamic part, which I really like. I think that's a great opportunity for all of us to start dialoguing about it. And then buying the book. Let's go to buying the book. let me just share with you that it's in a few places. However, before any of those places, I bought my own inventory as well. So anybody who buys through me directly, 50% of the money goes to Les Garten Foundation. Now, of course, you can order a copy. It goes straight to Amazon. It goes straight to Barnes & Noble, and then it goes to the publishing company. The publishing company is Exclibris, which is who I worked with the first time and the second time, and they have it there. Eventually, there's going to be an ebook, which they promised in a couple of weeks. So there will be an ebook as well. And then they're still selling the first book, which was our first book here. So, you know, book sales are important, obviously, and the support that we want everybody to find somehow. And so part of what I'd like to do is think in terms of what areas we might consider. For instance, I purchased some marketing supplies, which my son-in-law helped me with. So he designed the postcard, and I intend to send out this postcard to hospitals, hospice facilities, pancreatic cancer research places, because I think this is important for follow-up for people, and it gives another, you know, thing, funeral homes. I just think it's another opportunity for them to reach out to the people who they serve. He also designed for me a bookmark, and I will send a bookmark to all of you so that you have it. Bookmark is nice. And then I bought myself a mug. It's all marketing, right? You know, it's trying to make sure that you have a brand, and our brand is this. However, as Pat pointed out, this process could be anybody who's grieving someone. It can be really any cancer. It can be really anything. What brought us together, obviously, is pancreatic cancer, but you know, it's obviously something that all of us are going through, and we go through at different stages. And I'm hoping that the support and the information that we give helps other people realize that it is a process, that it's okay to grieve in different ways. There's no prescription for it. You know, oh, get over it already. I love that. You know, get over it. How many of us heard that? Yo, it's 2 years already. Why aren't you over this? You know, we all know it. We all went through it. So, you know, if there are ways that you can think, send me information, send me people who you want me to send it to, any kind of special centers that you think would be interested in this. Certainly Cancer Treatment Centers of America is one of the places I'm going to target. Right here in Winthrop Hospital, there is a pancreatic cancer research wing. You know, and again, our book is of course after, however, you know, they follow people as well. So I'd like to think in terms of how we can get this book out in, you know, in other ways. So I'm open to ideas, and please feel free to send me. And again, groups, organizations, maybe, you know, American Cancer Society. I mean, there's a lot I think that we can do here. And again, we want this out for support, but obviously we want this to raise money for the Les Garten Foundation. I have big dreams about this. Big marketing campaigns, and I feel really strongly, especially in this time where so many people have lost their loved ones, that this is really the value of what we're giving them, you know, is just indescribable, because we've shared our story. There's been a video that's been running, and some of you have seen it, and I just want to thank John, who's resting there. John is my media specialist, and I sent him the book, you know, describe what we did and everything. He read the beginning of it and came up with just such a beautiful video ad, which, you know, really captured the meaning of the book. And that was now for this, you know, this event. Well, I'll be playing it again, but this time the ending is all about why people should buy the book. So we'll be able to play it again. It's really a beautiful ad. And thank you, John, for your expertise, creativity, technology, and all that. I want to give away a book today. So I need everybody whose birthdays, not you, Sarah, everybody whose birthdays are in November. Any November birthdays here? Okay, Donna. Anybody else in November? No, not Deborah. Yours is in June. You're the only one, Donna, huh?
Seriously?
Okay, seriously. I'm going to send you a book, and I'm going to tell you why. In memory and celebration of my husband, who was born on November 18th. You will have a copy of this book in memory and celebration of him.
Thank you so much.
Don and I know each other, by the way, from years past, from another organization that I was working for at the time. So
Yeah.
thank you for
Thank
being
you, Lisa. That's
You're welcome.
wonderful.
You're welcome. Now, any questions or comments? We only have a couple minutes and I'm going to close it with something that I said at the end of the book. But do you have any questions either for Dr. Rakeman or for me or any of the contributors at this time? All is quiet. Aaron, unmute. There you go. Aaron's son is Dr. Rakeman, you should hear about Aaron's son. You want to unmute, Aaron?
Okay, there we go.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I'd like the opportunity to talk to Andrew on the phone outside of the meeting.
Yes,
I don't want to take time in the meeting,
yes.
but I happen to know something about the smartness of tumors and their ability to shun the immune system. And my son, who's CEO of American Gene Technologies, has a technique for preventing that from happening or for changing the situation and also handling metastases. So if we could, what would be if you just give me your phone number and tell me when you want me to call.
I will send you all the information, okay?
Yeah, and for anybody, nobody hides at Lustgarten, first initial, last name at lustgarten.org. So you can email me, arakeman@lustgarten.org, if anybody has questions or wants to follow up.
I'm going to be sending your contact information with that update that I got, the research updates. So everybody will receive a copy of that as well. And that'll be by email. So you'll definitely have that, Aaron.
Yeah, so if I can get to a telephone call with
Yep.
Andrew, that would be
Sure.
great.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anybody else before I close on time? Okay, I have something that I would like to share. We're talking in terms of our sort of advice and all, and I want to read you, to me, the meaning of what was important to me in this book. Of course, my new life is different from what I had planned, but it is exciting, happy, and wonderful, taking each day, living fully, and making new memories. I'm so grateful for each day of being alive, and I hope that this book inspires others to see that families move on as all our family members would have liked. My wish for all of us is to live fully, love fully, and enjoy the life that we have no matter how long. The past is a memory, the present is a gift, and the future is not promised. This is my message to all who read this. And that hopefully is the takeaway from why I did this book and what it means to me. And I thank all of you for sharing this time. Hey, Chris.
Hey, Lisa.
Thank you for joining us.
I promise.
Anyway, I have ended 3 minutes early. Not bad. I want to thank Dr. Rakeman again for your research update, and we look forward to finding out, obviously continuous updates from the Lustgarten Foundation, and of course all the walks and the other things that we could do. But the sales of these books are what we're going to work for, to be able to support what you do. So, and by the way, 100% of their money goes to research. Okay, it's not staffing, it's not the other things that you'll read from other organizations. 100%. I'm really proud of that with Lustgarten Foundation. So yeah. And my dear friends, I thank you for your support. That's what life is all about. And family, I love you all. And guests and new people, I thank you. And old people as well. Jonathan, so good to see you after so many years. Thank you. This is what life is all about. So thank you all, and let's sell lots of books, okay? Thanks again for being here tonight.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Everyone.
Good night,
Thanks,
everybody.
Lisa.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Bye.